And I think that might have been the Sunday that there wasn't very many people here. I think the camp manager from Butler Springs, what's his name, slipping out my name, Keith Warner, was here. I think that was right last year as well. So periodically we definitely do. I try to get those, honestly, when I'm gone for something, I try to get one of those people to fill in. That way it kind of enables them to come and talk about their ministry and give us an update, but also fill in and preach as well. So anyway, I think it's great that we give 10% of what we take in to missions. And so, again, we don't always see those things every day, what's going on. They do send reports and updates. I always stick their newsletters out there on the bulletin board when you first walk in the door. Some of them send them every month, some of them send them every quarter. But you can always stop by there and look at those, take it off and read it, whatever.
And I will mention that we have stopped supporting missions that would not give a good accounting of what they were doing.
And our missions change from time to time as well, as what we support and what we don't for different reasons. So, but again, appreciate that report. Now, briefly, I want to get into the future state of the church. In other words, where are we headed? Where are we going? Where are we going to be in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years? I think those are important questions to ask because, as I look around our auditorium this morning, some of us won't be here in 5 years or 10 years. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I mean that, hey, you get to go to heaven, so I think it's a pretty good deal. But, congregations age. And if I look around the room, I see more older folks than younger folks. And so, to me, as a minister, I see that as a problem or an issue that we need to get more young families in here. We need to get more people in here. But here's the thing. I know God controls the future, and our job is to be obedient and faithful to God and His church. But we can make a difference today and tomorrow and into the future. And that's how I see a church. Anytime I go to a church and preach, I always see, I don't know how long I will be there, but I want to leave the church better than when I found it. And we have to see the bigger picture of the church. Sometimes we get into this mindset, oh, that was the church I was raised in, that was the church I've been a member of for 40 years, or this or that. We get into all that stuff about ourselves. But this is the Lord's church. It's not my church. It's not your church. It's the Lord's church. First of all. Second of all, we have to see the church as this is everybody that's a part of it is important. And even people that come after us are important. There's people that are going to come to this church down the road who came here because of the things that we did today or tomorrow. And you may not see yourself as being an important part of that, but you are. And so those are real questions we've got. And the reason why a lot of churches dwindle and die is because they don't ask questions like this. They don't think about the future. They just think about today. Or they think they're narrow-minded and think about themselves, and they don't think about the big picture or those type of things. And we need to, if we want to be a healthy church that's an active church, we have to ask those things. You might remember the question that God said in Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and to not harm you, plans to give you a future and a hope. And I know during that time that the Israelites were rebelling and going into captivity. But God reminded Jeremiah that I have plans for you and your people. I've got plans down the road for you, and I want you to prosper. I don't want to harm you. I want to give you a hope and a future. And that's what 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now, if the Lord doesn't return, I want Adena Road to be a healthy church. I want this to be a growing church. And like I said, sometimes when we come to a church for years and years and years, not only do we become complacent about the building, the facilities, and not caring about it, we also kind of get that way about people. If we've always been a church of 40 or 50 or 10 or whatever, we just think that's the way it is and that's the way it's going to be. It doesn't have to be that way. Our goal every week should be to see people saved. Our goal should be to see new people. And during the week, we should be out evangelizing. Wherever we go, we have friends and neighbors and colleagues and people we work with and go to school with and people we meet in social scenarios. We all have an opportunity to plant a seed and water a seed. And so that's what's going to make a difference. God does want to bless us. God does want us to prosper. He doesn't want to harm us. He wants to give us this future and hope. But we have to be an active part of that. It's kind of what Proverbs 24:14 says, know also that wisdom is like honey for you. if you find that there is a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. So I think the key for all of us in this church is to seek God's wisdom for the future. We are all an important part of this church. I've come up with some observations. Again, like I said, I have fresh eyes. I'm newer here. Maybe some of you have these, but I came up with a list of things that I think we need to do here. And I'm just speaking from the minister's point of view, but this is what I feel. I feel like as a church, to be healthy and to grow, we have to have vision for the future. In other words, we need to have vision and see the big picture, you know. It's nice to set goals. It's nice to say, hey, I'd love to see us have 10 new members this year, or 22 new members, or whatever. And it's nice for us to see the church down the road, you know. Sometimes we just see today. Sometimes we can't see past tomorrow in our lives. And as a church, you know, I want to see this church grow. I want to see new people come to Christ. I want to see us reach out to our family and friends and neighbors in our community and so on and so forth. So I believe in order to do that, you have to have vision. If you see the church as same, you know, the way it always has been, the way it always will be, then that's the way it always is going to be. But if you have vision and you can envision the church growing and reaching out and doing more than it's doing today, then I think that's something important that all of us need to do. I also think something that's important is leadership development. This is a problem in a lot of churches. And what I mean is that they've had the same elders and deacons for decades and decades and decades, and finally when those people get older, they can't no longer continue to lead because they've got health problems or something, or they die or something like that. They've not developed anybody to take over. And one of the things that's important as a church that we should be doing and we need to do is we need to develop future leaders. And in other words, you know, out here in this congregation, maybe they're not even here yet, maybe it's some of you, but we need people to step up and be trustees and who want to be a deacon and want to be an elder. Maybe you're saying, well, I don't feel qualified to be an elder right now. Maybe 5 years from now you would. Maybe 5 years from now you can see yourself as a deacon. But I think a part of our job, and I'll talk to our leaders about this, is we do need to start developing leaders and getting younger people. You know, these are conversations I've had individually with some of our leaders already that, you know, we do need to start thinking about that because, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road, you know, who's going to take the baton? You know, who can we hand that off to? You don't want to be left in a situation, and those churches I mentioned, that was one of the issues that I was a part of, the dwindle. That was one of the issues they had in their churches. They didn't have any leaders. And without leadership, your church tends to get more and more inward focused, and people get more and more discouraged and whatever. People leave and go find a better church, you know, if I'm just being blunt. And so leadership is important to the health of the church. So I think that's important. I also think spiritual growth and maturity of our members, making disciples. Me and you need to be more proactive in our own spiritual health and growth. We need to be reading our Bibles. We need to be developing and deepening our prayer life. We need to be being more active in our day-to-day lives, looking for people that we can minister to or spread the gospel or share the good news or whatever it is that we do. It's something as simple as telling somebody to pray for them or being there and holding their hand when they're going through a hard time. I mean, there's lots of things. But individually, we all need to grow. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But did anybody read through the Bible this year? Got quite a few of you. Yeah, I'm proud to say that on Friday I finished up my Bible reading for the year, and that's about probably the 4th or 5th year in a row. I mean, you'd think a preacher I do it every year, but I don't. After a while, I didn't do it for quite a few years, but I think for at least the past 4 or 5 years I've read through the Bible. We have plans back there in the back. When you walk out the door on the table, there's plans there. You can find online plans to read if you like doing it on your phone or your tablet. There's lots of things. But I would encourage you to read your Bible. It's a good discipline to have. That's one thing you can do. You can set aside time to read Christian books or to pray. But there's lots of things you can do for your spiritual growth. If you're not involved in a Sunday school class or one of our small groups, you have an opportunity to go to those and get some study. And in the future, maybe we'll add more small groups or more Bible studies, things like that to help people. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to grow our own faith and to mature. And so I want to encourage all of us to do that. You know, you don't want to be a Christian 20 or 30 or 40 years and know nothing about the Bible. And I had a conversation recently, it was actually with one of the camp managers, and he was talking about how many people have been in church for years and years and years, and they don't know basic Christianity. They don't know the Bible. They just go to church every Sunday, and they're not growing. They're not growing and spiritually maturing in their faith. They're just going to church, and so I don't want us to be a church like that. Another thing that's important is reaching the younger generations and families. We really need to be, now all people matter, don't get me wrong on that. I don't want to just focus on young people, but we do. We have a big age gap in our church right now. We don't have a lot of people in the 20s to 40s range. We have no upper grade school kids. We have no junior high kids. We've got a few senior high. I mean, there's big gaps in ages here. And so it's important that we try to and I get it. People, when they're looking for a church and got families, they want to go somewhere that has a good youth program, a good children's program, a good nursery, those sort of things. And it's hard sometimes for smaller churches to, we can't compete with some things larger churches are doing. There's no way we can offer that. But if you don't ever get any of the new people in, younger people in, you can't develop those things in the church. So it's really important for us to start reaching some of your children and your grandchildren and nieces and nephews and great-grandchildren and all these people so that we can start developing more of those programs in our church. But I think that's important for a church to grow. And even this goes up even to leadership development. Some of these people that are in here might be future elders and deacons and trustees in our church. And so it's important for us. You've probably heard the saying, the church is only one generation away from extinction. If one generation doesn't get the gospel message, it could eventually go extinct. And so it's always important for us to share that. And I want to change those numbers. I definitely want to see more older faces, so stick around, but I also want to see some younger faces in our church as well. We also want to continue to improve our service opportunities. We want to give you guys opportunities to serve and volunteer, and that's the struggle. Unfortunately, in our church, it seems to be the same 10 people that do everything. And I hear that stat all the time in church. Well, it's the same, the faithful few, it's only the same people. And I want to break that cycle. I don't want it to be the same. I don't want to wear out the same 10 people to do everything. They're the ones always stay and volunteer to do things and show up when you have things. I want us to expand that because we're all gifted in different ways. And so we need to continue to improve our service opportunities, give you opportunities to serve. Maybe there's ministries this church doesn't have yet that we can start. But I don't want to just have ministries to have ministries and have programs to have programs. I want to, whatever we have, I want it to be done well. I don't want to have 15 mediocre programs. I want to have 5 programs that are done well, and then you go from there. But maybe there's things we don't have yet. Maybe you have gifts that we're not using. But there are opportunities for you to serve. We don't even have anybody teaching junior church on the 4th Sunday because nobody will volunteer to do it. And so they're having to come up here. So, there are still needs in this church now that you can volunteer and be a part of. But I want us to continue improving those opportunities. Again, so that the same people don't get burnt out from doing things. We also want to continue to develop our evangelism and outreach. This is how we're going to get the Lord's name out in our communities. We can't just sit here in this building and hope people come to us. We have to get outside this building and find opportunities to evangelize and outreach in our community. We're doing small steps like the clothing thing and the school kickoff thing and school supplies and buying Christmas presents. Those are small things, but we need to come up with and continue to do things that is getting the Lord's name out there and look for opportunities. Maybe you have ideas for that. And finally, I talked about upgrading and upkeeping our facilities. Our facilities is still important. That's not the most important thing here, but we do have to take care of this building. If you don't take care of your building or your house, it's just going to deteriorate. It's not only going to lose value, it's just going to fall apart on top of you. And so we have to do things to improve our building and be good stewards of this place that God gave us. And we've got some things in the works here. We're going to talk about something this morning. Steve will mention that to you all later. But we have some. We want to get new carpet in the building, and we want to get new windows, and we have a roof repair that we need to do. We're working on getting an awning for our entrance out there on the ramp, so that there's bad weather and that sort of thing. Those are just some things we got going on. But we do have we do have things on the table, things we're wanting to do to improve our facilities. But we not only want to improve our facilities, we want to improve our services. We want to improve your service opportunities. We want to improve the health of the church. I mean, this church isn't on life support by any means. But to say we're going to go in front of God and say we're 100% healthy and don't do anymore, that's not true. This church is not a perfect church. We have things that we can work on and improve. Now, we're fortunate enough that we don't have any splits or any divisions or any problems. I've been very thankful for that and pray that we continue to be that way, that we continue to be unified and continue to support our leadership here and those sort of things. But again, we do want to do things to improve our church as a whole. There's always room for improvement. I would bet most of you all in your jobs probably got a yearly evaluation, where they tell you how good you're doing, how bad you're doing, things you need to work on. Hopefully it's not bad where you're not going to have a job in 3 months if you don't straighten up or whatever. But, we're used to evaluating things, and we need to evaluate our church. We need to evaluate the things that are going on in our ministries, our programming, our facilities, all that thing. And our leaders currently are doing those things so that we can make our church a better place. Which brings me to my final thought, which is us. We also need to, what is the state of my spiritual health as a church member? Am I doing everything that I need to be doing to grow in my faith? Because if I'm a healthy church member, I'm going to make the church healthier. If I'm growing in my faith, I'm going to help the church grow. I find the words in Hebrews chapter 12. A lot of people like to use this verse to talk about church attendance. I've seen it thrown around. You don't want to miss church services because of this. And I get that, but I think there's a deeper meaning than just skipping a church service. The Hebrew writer says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders us and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith." And I believe this verse here really sums up what we need to be doing. We need to throw off anything in this world that is entangling us and hindering us from serving the Lord and growing our faith, or any sin in our life that's entangling us. And then we need to persevere and run this race marked out for us in life. Yeah, there's going to be detours, there's going to be obstacles, there's going to be problems, there's going to be leg cramps, but we need to persevere and work through those. But how we do that is found in the second verse, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. And this is why in verse 3 he says, "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart." The key for us growing in our faith is to fix our eyes on Jesus. Look at his example. He didn't give up. He finished the race. He kept the faith. He was obedient even to death on the cross. He set us an example on how we should live, how we should treat others. And so we don't need to get off track. We don't need to give up. We don't need to throw in the towel. We need to fix our eyes on Jesus and let him serve as our example. There was a book written a few years ago, and I've actually read it. It's called Comeback Churches. And it's a book by Ed Stetzer and Mike Dodson. And they surveyed 324 churches through 10 different denominations that were dwindling and dying, but began to turn around and started growing again. And here are the top 10 things they attributed their resurgence to. So these were churches that were dwindling and dying, and they came back. You know what I mean? They made a comeback. These were the areas, and some of them I already mentioned in my sermon. The first thing they mentioned was prayer. They talked about children's ministry and evangelism and youth ministry and leadership, missions, assimilation, which is getting people involved, worship, Sunday school, small groups, and the organizational structure. These are all things that they mentioned that help their church grow. And I don't know where we are in all these, but I know that I want to strive to be the church that God created. He wants us to thrive. He wants us to be healthy. And it's up to us to evangelize this world. It's up to us to spread the gospel and to make disciples. And we can only do that if me and you are growing in our faith and the church is healthy, spiritually healthy. And I'm a firm believer, if a church is growing spiritually, the numbers are going to come. You know, there's a lot of churches that grew numerically, but they're not very spiritual. I heard one person say a church is a mile wide and an inch deep. You know what I mean? They might have a lot of people, but the people they're not discipling and growing their people. They're there for the wrong reasons. And I want to be a church that's spiritually healthy. Our numbers might not come as fast, but I believe numbers will come if me and you are doing our part to grow in our faith and we're helping the church grow. So that's where I see the state of the church this morning as the minister. And I hope you will join me in continuing to make this church a better place, and we will continue to grow as a church family together and continue serving the Lord together. We're going to offer our song of invitation now. And if anybody needs to respond to the invitation in any way, you can meet me down front as we stand and as we sing.